He grabbed
Don't
my
move.
wrist,
They're watching.
not in anger, in terror. "Don't move," he whispered. "They're watching." That's when I realized I wasn't just his nurse. I was the reason the billionaire CEO who couldn't stand women near him finally broke. But here's what no one told me. He knew exactly who I was. And I had no idea who I used to be. Tell me which country you're watching from. Your messages always make my day. And if you're not subscribed yet, join us. There's so much more coming. Now let's continue. My name is Lily. 3 months ago I was invisible. The kind of invisible that comes from wearing scrubs for 12-hour shifts, from paying bills late, from being too tired to remember what dreaming felt like. The kind of invisible where you stop seeing yourself in mirrors because there's nothing worth looking at. I worked the night shift at St. Catherine's Hospital in Brooklyn, emergency department. The kind of place where people come to die or fight not to. Where you learn to keep your emotions in a locked box, because if you let yourself feel everything, you never stop crying. I was a good nurse. Not great. Not the kind they write articles about or nominate for awards. Just good enough to keep showing up, keep my license clean, keep my head down. I showed up on time. I followed protocols. I didn't make waves. That was my entire identity. Nurse Lily. Single. Broke. Forgettable. The girl who ate lunch alone in the break room because she didn't have the energy for small talk. The girl whose only friend was her landlord's cat. The girl who'd stopped believing in the kind of life where things got better. I didn't remember being anyone else. Didn't remember wanting to be. 5 years ago, I'd woken up in a hospital with no memory of how I'd gotten there, no ID, no belongings. Just a head injury and a social worker who kept asking questions I couldn't answer. Who are you? Where are you from? Is there anyone we can call? I didn't know. The doctors called it retrograde amnesia. Trauma-induced memory loss. They said it might come back with time or it might not. They ran tests, scans, put my photo in missing persons databases. Nothing came back. No one claimed me. No one recognized me. I was a ghost without a past. So I became Lily Hayes. The name came from a nurse who was kind to me during those first terrifying weeks. Hayes because it was simple, and I needed something simple when everything else was chaos. I built a life from nothing. Got my GED. Went to nursing school on financial aid I'd probably be paying off until I died. Graduated middle of my class. Started working. Started existing. But I never felt real. There was always this sense that I was playing a part, wearing someone else's life like a costume that didn't quite fit. I'd catch myself in mirrors sometimes and not recognize my own face, like looking at a stranger. I told myself it was the amnesia. The disconnect between who I was and who I'd been. I had no idea how right I was. Then I got the call. It came through an agency I'd never heard of. Elite Medical Staffing. The kind of name that sounded too polished to be real. I almost didn't answer. Unknown number, late afternoon on my only day off in 2 weeks. But my rent was overdue and my student loans were laughing at my minimum payments, so I picked up. "Miss Hayes?" The woman's voice was professional, crisp. Like she was reading from a script, but had memorized it well enough to sound natural. "Speaking," I said. "My name is Catherine Wu. I'm calling from Elite Medical Staffing. We have a unique opportunity that matches your qualifications." I sat up straighter on my couch. In scrubs even on my day off because I'd been doing laundry. My exciting life? What kind of opportunity? Private nursing care. Long-term placement. The client is particular about privacy. We can't discuss details over the phone, but the compensation is substantial and the position would begin immediately. Red flags everywhere. But substantial compensation had a way of making red flags look pink. How substantial, I asked. $15,000 per week. Room and board included. Contract minimum of 3 months. I did the math. 15,000 times 12 weeks. $180,000. More than I made in 2 years. What's the catch? I asked carefully. There's no catch. There are requirements. You'd need to sign comprehensive confidentiality agreements. The client values discretion above all else. What kind of client needs that level of discretion? The kind who can afford to pay for it. We'll need you to come to our Manhattan office for a full briefing. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm texting you the address now. My phone buzzed. I looked at the address. 5th Avenue. The kind of address that had doormen and marble lobbies. Miss Hayes? Can we count on you tomorrow? I thought about my overdue rent. About eating ramen for the 4th night in a row. About my car making a sound that probably meant expensive repairs I couldn't afford. I'll be there, I said. Excellent. Dress professionally. And Miss Hayes, whatever questions you have, save them for the meeting. This isn't a conversation we can have over an unsecured line. She hung up before I could ask what that meant. I stared at my phone for a long time after that call, trying to decide if I was being recruited for a legitimate job or about to become a character in a true crime podcast. But I went anyway. Because when you're drowning in debt and living paycheck to paycheck, even questionable opportunities start looking like life rafts. The building was the kind of place I'd only seen in movies. All glass and steel. Security guards in suits who looked like they could break you in half without wrinkling their uniforms. The lobby had marble floors so polished I could see my reflection and furniture that probably cost more than my car. I gave my name to the receptionist, trying not to feel like I'd walked onto the set of a billionaire's fever dream. Miss Hayes, a voice said behind me. I turned. The woman was maybe 40, wearing a charcoal suit that screamed expensive and understated. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She had the kind of face that gave nothing away. Catherine Wu, she said, extending a hand. Thank you for coming. Her handshake was firm, professional. Exactly 3 seconds long. Follow me, please. She led me to an elevator that moved so smoothly I barely felt us climbing. When the doors opened on the 42nd floor, I stepped into silence. Not quiet. Silence, like the air itself had been designed to absorb sound. The hallway was lined with abstract art that probably had price tags I couldn't comprehend. Everything was cream and silver and expensive. Like walking through a very polished, very beautiful cage. Catherine stopped at a conference room and gestured for me to enter. Inside was a table, 2 chairs, and a folder. Please sit, she said. I sat. She opened the folder and slid a tablet across to me. These are the employment documents. Confidentiality agreements. Liability waivers. Terms of employment. You'll need to read everything carefully before signing. I started reading. The confidentiality agreement was intense. I couldn't discuss the client, the location, the nature of the work, or anything I saw or heard. Violation meant legal action and financial penalties that made my brain hurt. The liability waiver was equally thorough. I wouldn't hold anyone responsible for injuries, emotional distress, or any other damages incurred during employment, unless they were grossly negligent, which apparently had a very narrow definition. The compensation section made me blink. $15,000 per week, paid bi-weekly, room and board provided, medical benefits, and a completion bonus of $50,000 if I fulfilled the 3-month minimum contract. $230,000 for 3 months of work. I read it twice to make sure I hadn't hallucinated a zero. What's the catch? I asked again. Catherine folded her hands on the table. The client has specific needs and specific rules. He's extremely private. He doesn't tolerate questions, curiosity, or breaches of protocol. You're being hired to provide medical care, not companionship or conversation. What kind of medical care? Monitoring vitals, managing medications, being available for emergencies. The specifics will be explained by the client. What's his condition? That's between you and him. What I can tell you is that he's not contagious, not violent, and not dying. But he is difficult. The last 3 nurses quit within 2 weeks. Why? Because they couldn't follow the rules. I looked at the tablet again. At that number. $230,000. What are the rules? I asked. Rule 1. No questions. You're there to provide medical care based on what he tells you. Not to diagnose, not to probe, not to push boundaries. Rule 2. No physical contact unless medically necessary. And even then, you ask permission first. Rule 3. No reaction to anything you see or hear. You maintain professional composure at all times. Rule 4. No attempts to identify him publicly, photograph him, or discuss him with anyone outside this building. She slid a pen across the table. If you can follow those rules, sign the documents. If you can't, leave now. No judgment either way. I picked up the pen. I should have left. Should have trusted my instincts that something about this was wrong. But I thought about my rent, my loans. The fact that I'd been living in survival mode for so long, I couldn't remember what security felt like. I signed. Catherine's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes looked almost sympathetic. The car is waiting downstairs, she said. You'll start immediately. Pack a bag. You won't need much. Everything is provided. Wait right now. The client doesn't like delays. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of a town car with a small duffel bag containing exactly 3 changes of clothes and a toothbrush. Because apparently when you sell your soul for $200,000, you do it fast. The car took me to a building in Tribeca. The kind of building that had its own private entrance and security so discreet you barely noticed it. A man in a suit met me at the door. He didn't introduce himself, just scanned a key card and led me to a private elevator. We rode in silence to the penthouse. When the doors opened, I stepped into the most beautiful apartment I'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Art on the walls that I was pretty sure I'd seen in textbooks. Everything was clean lines and muted colors, and so perfectly arranged it felt staged. Like a photograph of how rich people lived. Wait here, the man said, and disappeared down a hallway. I stood in the center of that enormous living room, holding my pathetic duffel bag, trying not to touch anything expensive. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, like someone who never hurried. I turned and saw him. Alexander Cross. I knew who he was. Everyone did. You couldn't live in New York and not know about Alexander Cross. CEO of Cross Industries, billionaire before 30. The man who'd built a tech empire from nothing and then disappeared from public life 3 years ago. The tabloids had gone wild with theories. He was sick. He was crazy. He was hiding from the government. He'd had a breakdown. He'd joined a cult. Looking at him now, he didn't look crazy. He looked controlled. Every muscle, every breath, every micro-expression calculated. Like he was holding himself together by sheer force of will. He was tall. Dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times. Sharp jaw. Eyes that were so dark they were almost black. Dressed in expensive casual clothes that somehow made him look more intimidating, not less. And he was staring at me like I was a grenade with the pin pulled. "You're the nurse," he said. Not a question, a statement. His voice was low, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't expect disobedience. "Yes," I said. "Lily Hayes." Something flickered in his eyes when I said my name. So fast I almost missed it. "Don't call me Mr. Cross," he said. "Alexander." "Alexander," I repeated. He was still staring, not moving closer. Not moving at all, just assessing. Like I was a problem he was trying to solve. "They told you the rules?" he asked. "Yes." "Good. Then let's be clear." He spoke without inflection, like he was reciting something he'd memorized. "I have a condition. It's rare. It's not contagious. It's not your concern beyond what I tell you. Your job is to monitor my vitals twice daily, manage my medication schedule, and stay out of my way." Questions. I had about 1,000, but I'd signed those papers. "No questions," I said. That thing flickered in his eyes again. Surprise? Relief. "Your quarters are down that hallway. Last door on the left. You'll have your own bathroom and workspace. The medical station is in my office. I'll show you in the morning. And tonight? Tonight you settle in. Stay in your room. I'll call if I need you." It felt like a dismissal. I picked up my duffel bag. "Lily." I turned back. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Welcome," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry." "For what?" He didn't answer. Just turned and walked away, leaving me standing there wondering what he was apologizing for. I found out soon enough. My room was bigger than my entire Brooklyn apartment. King bed with sheets that felt like silk. Furniture that was both modern and comfortable. A bathroom with a tub I could swim in. Everything I could possibly need. And then some. It should have felt luxurious. Instead, it felt like a very beautiful cage. I unpacked my pathetic 3 changes of clothes into a walk-in closet that could have housed a family of 4. Brushed my teeth in a sink with gold fixtures. Stared at myself in a mirror framed in what I was pretty sure was actual marble. And wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into. Around midnight, I heard movement in the apartment. Footsteps. The sound of a door closing. Then silence again. I lay in that enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to sleep. I couldn't. Something about this place felt wrong. Not dangerous, just off. Like the air pressure was different. Like I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. At 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and decided to explore. The apartment was dark except for the city lights filtering through those enormous windows. I moved quietly down the hallway, past doors I didn't open, toward the living room. Alexander was standing at the windows. Just standing there, perfectly still, staring out at New York like he was trying to memorize every light. Can't sleep? I asked from the doorway.
He didn't turn, didn't even seem surprised I was there.
I never sleep when you're here, he said.
The admission was so blunt it startled me.
Why not? Because I'm waiting for you to leave. I should have felt insulted.
Instead, I felt something else. Curiosity, and maybe a little bit of that nurse instinct that made me want to fix things. I'm not going anywhere, I said.
I signed a contract. Contracts can be broken, not by me. I need the money too badly.
He finally looked at me then, really looked at me. And something in his expression made my breath catch. Recognition, like he knew me, like he'd been waiting for me. What? I asked.
Nothing, he said quickly. Too quickly. Go back to bed, Lily. I can't sleep either. Try harder. I crossed my arms. You're not my boss. Not when it comes to sleeping schedules. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. But not quite. Technically, I am your boss, he said. Technically, you're my patient. Which means I'm in charge of your health. And standing at windows at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping isn't healthy. Now he did smile. Small, but real. Careful, Nurse Hayes, he said.
That sounded almost like concern. It's my job to be concerned.
No, he said.
Your job is to follow orders and not ask questions. That human connection isn't optional. It's survival. And whatever you're doing here, cutting yourself off from everyone, building all these walls and rules, it's not protecting you. It's killing you slowly. I'd gone too far. I could see it in the way his expression shuddered, in the way his hands clenched at his sides. Go to bed, Lily, he said. Voice cold now, distant. Alexander, that's an order. I went, but as I walked back to my room, I heard him say something so quietly, I almost missed it. You're right.
That's why you scare me. I spent the next 3 days trying to figure out what his condition actually was. Every morning at 8 a.m. sharp, I'd knock on his office door and wait for permission to enter. He'd be sitting at his desk, already dressed, already working, like he'd been up for hours, which I suspected he had been. He wasn't sick. His vitals were perfect every time I checked them. Blood pressure 118/76. Heart rate a steady 68 beats per minute. Oxygen saturation 99%. Temperature 98.4. All textbook normal. Better than normal, actually. He had the vitals of an athlete. He didn't take medications.
Didn't have any visible symptoms. Didn't show signs of pain or discomfort. But he had rules.
So many rules. No one was allowed within 6 feet of him.
Not his housekeeper, who came twice a week and moved through the apartment like a ghost. Not his assistant, Marcus, who visited daily with papers to sign and never stayed longer than necessary.
Not me. If anyone got too close, Alexander would freeze.
Not like a panic attack, it was stranger than that.
His eyes would go unfocused. His breathing would stop. His entire body would lock up like a statue. The first time I saw it happen, I thought he was having a seizure and reached for him. Marcus grabbed my arm. Don't! Just wait. We waited. 30 seconds. A minute. It felt like an eternity. Then Alexander blinked, exhaled, and stepped back. Methodically. Like he was following a protocol. I told you, he said quietly to Marcus. 6 feet. After that, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Alexander never looked directly at women. If a female staff member entered, rare but it happened,
His gaze would fix on a point just past their shoulder. His assistant was male. His security team was male. His housekeeper was an older woman who'd been with him for years and knew to keep her distance. Every person who came into regular contact with him was either male or old enough to be his mother. Except me. I was the only young woman allowed in his space. And he was terrified of me. Not of me specifically. Of what I represented. I could see it in the way he positioned himself when I entered a room, always with furniture between us, always with an exit accessible. Like I was a threat he was calculating how to neutralize. On the fourth day, I decided to test a theory. When Alexander called me to check his morning vitals, a routine he insisted on even though he was perfectly healthy, I stepped closer than usual. Not breaking the 6-foot rule, but pushing it. 5.5 feet instead of 6. He noticed immediately. His breathing changed, quickened. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. Lily, a warning. I need an accurate reading, I said, moving my blood pressure cuff. I can't do that from across the room. Step back. Why? I held his gaze. I'm your nurse. This is medical care. You said that was allowed. His jaw clenched. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. It's not you I'm afraid will hurt me, he said quietly. It's what I'll do if you get too close. The admission hung in the air between us. What would you do? I asked. Something I can't control. I should have backed away. Should have respected the boundary. Every professional instinct said to give him space. But something in his voice, the rawness, the fear that wasn't fear of me but of himself, made me stay where I was. Try me, I said. Lily, I'm not fragile. And I'm not afraid of you. His hands were shaking now, visibly, not from illness. From restraint. You should be, he said. Everyone who gets close to me ends up hurt. And there it was, the real fear. Is that what happened? I asked. 3 years ago when you disappeared from public life? His eyes went cold, empty. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me I can't or won't. Both. He stood abruptly, putting more distance between us. You need to stop pushing. Stop trying to understand. Just do your job and stay out of my head. That's not how this works. I'm your nurse. Which means I need to understand what I'm treating. You're not treating anything, he said harshly. You're a glorified babysitter they hired to make sure I don't do something stupid. That's all. The words should have stung. But I could see the lie in them. See the desperation in the way he was backing toward the window. Who are you protecting? I asked softly. Me or yourself? He laughed. Sharp, bitter. You really want to know? Yes, both. I'm protecting both of us from a mistake I've already made once before. Before I could ask what that meant, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and went very still. Go to your room, he said. What's wrong? Now, Lily. The use of my name, combined with that tone, made me move. I went to my room. I locked the door, and I waited. 10 minutes later, I heard voices. Men's voices. Unfamiliar and aggressive. I pressed my ear to the door but couldn't make out words. Just the rise and fall of argument. Then silence. Then Alexander's voice, very close to my door. You can come out now. I opened the door. He was standing there. Closer than he'd ever been. Close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw. The way his hands were trembling slightly.
What happened? I asked. Nothing you need to worry about. Alexander, they were looking for someone. He met my eyes. I told them she wasn't here. My breath caught. Who were they looking for? He didn't answer. Just held my gaze for one more second, then walked away. That's when I knew. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't just about his condition. It was about me. The next morning, I started digging, not in obvious ways. I couldn't ask Alexander directly, that would violate every rule I'd agreed to. But I could observe. And what I observed was a man who was being watched, not by his staff, by someone else. Someone who wanted something. The first clue came while I was checking Alexander's morning vitals. As I approached with the blood pressure cuff, I noticed his eyes flicker, not to me, but past me, to the window. I turned slightly, following his gaze. There, across the street, on a rooftop, a glint of something metallic. Could have been nothing. Could have been a camera lens. Lily. His voice pulled me back. Focus. Sorry. But I wasn't sorry. I was paying attention now. Over the next few days, I cataloged everything unusual. The way Alexander's head of security, James, swept the apartment with electronic devices every morning. The cameras I found hidden in decorative objects. So small I only noticed them because I'd been a nurse in the era where we learned to spot things people tried to hide. I started keeping a mental log. Visitors, phone calls, patterns. Marcus came every day at 10 a.m. Always precisely on time. Always left by 10:45. Never varied. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, I'd learned, came Tuesdays and Fridays. Never spoke. Never made eye contact with Alexander. Moved through the apartment like she was trying to be invisible. Alexander took calls in his office. Sometimes brief, sometimes hours long. And when he emerged from those calls, his jaw would be tight, his movements more controlled than usual. Like he was holding himself together by force of will. On day 6, I decided to test something. When Mrs. Chen arrived, I stood in the hallway. Not hiding, just observing. She let herself in with a key. Didn't knock. Didn't announce herself. Just entered like this was routine. And when she passed Alexander in the living room, he didn't freeze. She was the only woman besides me who didn't trigger that reaction. Why? I approached her in the kitchen while she was cleaning. Mrs. Chun? She looked up, startled. Sorry, I said quickly. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm Lily, the new nurse. Her expression softened slightly. I know who you are. How long have you worked for Alexander? 7 years. Since before she stopped herself. Before what? I should work. Please, I'm trying to understand. His condition, the rules, it's not my place to say, then whose place is it? Because he won't tell me, and I can't help him if I don't understand what's wrong. Mrs. Chun's hand stilled on the counter. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then very quietly, nothing is wrong with him. Not medically. Then why? He's protecting himself. From what happened before? What happened before? She met my eyes. He lost someone. The only person he trusted. And it broke him in ways that don't show on medical tests. Who did he lose? But Mrs. Chun was already walking away, leaving me with more questions than answers. That afternoon, Marcus came for his daily briefing. I timed it so I'd be in the medical station. The wall was thin enough to hear through if I was quiet. I heard the elevator. Footsteps. Marcus's voice, professional and calm. Morning briefing. Security flagged 3 incidents overnight. All perimeter. No direct threats. Show me, Alexander said. Papers rustling. Then silence. Then this one. Top right. Who is she? My pulse quickened. Unknown, Marcus said. Facial recognition came back negative. Could be a tourist. Or a scout. Have James pull traffic cameras for the last week. I want to know if she's been here before. Alexander, you can't assume every stranger is. I can and I will. Not after last time. More silence. Then Marcus spoke again carefully. Have you told her? No, you should. If they're watching, I know what they're doing. And I know what I'm risking by having her here. But I had to know. Know what? If it was really her, and a long pause. Then, I don't know. She looks like Elizabeth. Sounds like her sometimes. But there's nothing there. No recognition. No memory. It's like looking at a ghost. My chest tightened. Elizabeth. The name from the photograph. Maybe that's better, Marcus said gently. Elizabeth is gone. This is Lily. Maybe you should accept that. I can't. Why not? Because I spent 5 years searching for her. Because I couldn't accept that she'd just vanish. Because his voice cracked slightly. Because if she's really gone, then everything they did to her, everything I couldn't stop, it was all for nothing. It's not for nothing if you move on. I don't want to move on. I want the truth. Sometimes the truth is that people don't come back. She did come back, Alexander said, voice hard now. She's here, in my apartment. And I'm going to figure out how and why. Even if that puts her in danger again? Silence. Then I won't let that happen twice. Footsteps. The conversation was ending. I moved away from the wall quickly, heading back to my room before anyone could know I'd been listening. But my hands were shaking. Elizabeth. The woman in the photograph. The woman Alexander had lost. The woman I apparently looked exactly like. On day 7, everything changed. It started with Marcus's visit, same time, same routine. But this time, when he left after 45 minutes, Alexander didn't return to his office. He came to find me. I was in my room, pretending to read a medical journal and actually obsessing over everything I'd learned. Lily. He appeared in my doorway. We need to talk. My stomach dropped. Did I do something wrong? No, but there's something you need to know. He gestured to the living room. Please. I followed him. He stood at the windows, his default position when he was anxious. 3 years ago, he began without preamble. I had a CFO. Her name was Elizabeth Cross. We were engaged. She was brilliant, driven, and the only person I'd ever completely trusted. He paused, waiting for a reaction I couldn't give because I already knew this part. One morning, she didn't come to work. Her apartment was empty. Her phone was off. Her bank accounts were frozen by federal investigators, claiming she'd embezzled $20 million from my company. Did she? I asked. No, but someone made it look that way. Someone who had access to her credentials, her files, her entire digital footprint. He turned to face me. Someone who wanted her gone and me destroyed. Who? Victoria Chen, my VP of operations at the time. Elizabeth had discovered discrepancies in our accounts. She was building a case to expose Victoria's real embezzlement. But Victoria moved first. My mind was reeling. And Elizabeth just disappeared? Without a trace. For 3 months.
Then he pulled out his phone, brought up a photo, and handed it to me. It was a missing persons report. Elizabeth Cross, last seen February 14th, 3 years ago. And next to it, a driver's license photo of me. Not Lily Hayes, Elizabeth Cross. That's not possible, I whispered.
Look at the date on your license, Alexander said quietly. I did. It was issued 4 years ago. Before I woke up in that hospital with no memory. This doesn't make sense. I've only had my license for 3 years. Since after my accident. You don't have an accident on record, Lily. You have a driver's license that says you're Elizabeth Cross, issued 4 years ago.
And hospital records showing you were admitted with head trauma and memory loss 3 years ago. Exactly 3 months after Elizabeth disappeared.
The room was spinning. You're saying I'm her.
That I'm Elizabeth. I'm saying you might be. The fingerprints match.
The DNA would match if we tested it. But you have no memory of being her. How is that possible? I don't know. The doctors said trauma could cause memory loss. But this level of loss? Creating an entirely new identity? That's not trauma. That's intentional.
I sat down before I fell down.
You think someone did this to me, Victoria. I think Victoria made you disappear. Made everyone think you were guilty. And then made sure you couldn't tell anyone the truth. By erasing my memory. Yes. I looked at the photo again. At the woman who wore my face. Who had my life before I existed?
Why tell me this now? I asked.
Because Marcus flagged unusual activity. Someone's been watching this building.
Running facial recognition on everyone who enters and exits.
And this morning he pulled up another photo. They got a hit. It was me. Leaving the building for a coffee run I'd made 2 days ago. And next to it, a 94% facial recognition match to Elizabeth Cross. They know, I said. They know someone matching Elizabeth's description is here. They don't know it's actually you.
Not yet. What do we do? Alexander's expression was grim.
We finish what Elizabeth started. We find the proof Victoria buried.
We expose her, and we make sure she can't hurt you again.
You mean hurt Elizabeth again? I mean hurt you, he said firmly. Lily, Elizabeth, both, neither. I don't care what name you use. You're in danger, and I'm not losing you twice. The words hung between us.
You don't even know me, I said. I know enough. Like what?
Like you're brave enough to push boundaries when you see someone suffering. Like you're kind enough to care about a patient who won't explain his condition. Like you're stubborn enough to keep showing up even when I'm being difficult. He paused. Like you deserve protection whether you remember why or not. My throat was tight. Alexander, you don't have to remember her, he said quietly. But I need you to understand that Victoria won't stop. She destroyed Elizabeth to protect herself. And if she thinks you're back, she'd do it again. Then we don't let her.
How? I stood up, met his eyes. We use me.
If they're watching, if they think I might be Elizabeth, let them think it. Let them come. And when they do, we'll be ready.
That's too dangerous.
More dangerous than doing nothing? Than waiting for her to make the first move? He was quiet for a long moment. Then if we do this, we do it my way. Total security. No unnecessary risks. And the minute things go sideways, you run. Understood? Understood. I mean it, Lily. You run. You don't try to be brave. You don't try to fight. You just run. Okay.
He searched my face, looking for something. Truth, maybe. Or Elizabeth. You're nothing like her, he said finally. Elizabeth would never have agreed to run. Is that good or bad? A ghost of a smile. I'm still deciding. That night we planned. Alexander showed me everything he'd collected over 3 years. Financial records spread across the dining table like evidence at a crime scene. Email trails printed and highlighted in different colors, yellow for suspicious timing, pink for forged signatures, green for IP address mismatches. Witness statements from employees who'd seen Victoria's behavior change after Elizabeth's disappearance. Subtle things that alone meant nothing but together painted a picture of someone hiding guilt. Bank transfers that didn't quite add up. Stock purchases made with inside information. A pattern of deception so elaborate, it had taken 3 years to untangle. It was circumstantial. Not enough for prosecution. Any decent lawyer would tear it apart in court. But it was enough to start asking questions. Enough to make people look closer. Enough to plant doubt in the minds of investors and board members who'd believed Victoria's version of events. We need more, I said, studying the documents. Something concrete. Something that proves Victoria was behind the embezzlement and the cover-up. I've been looking for 3 years. If there was smoking gun evidence, I'd have found it. Maybe you were looking in the wrong places. Where would you look? I thought about it. About what I knew from my nursing background, from dealing with people who hid things. People don't just disappear, I said slowly. Someone helped Victoria make Elizabeth vanish. Doctors, maybe, to cause the memory loss. Identity specialists to create Lily Hayes. Financial people to set up new accounts. Finding them would require following the money. I finished. Not cross-industries money. Victoria's personal accounts. If she paid people to do this, there'd be a trail. Alexander's eyes lit up. Marcus can access financial records through our security contractor. If we give him Victoria's information, do it, I said. And Alexander, we need to move fast. If they're running facial recognition, they're preparing for something. We need to be ready first. He pulled out his phone, started typing. 3 days later, Marcus found it. A payment, $200,000. From Victoria's personal account to a medical facility in upstate New York. 3 months before Lily Hayes appeared at a Brooklyn hospital with no memory. What kind of medical facility? I asked. Marcus pulled up the details. Private clinic. Specialized in neurological rehabilitation. Closed 2 years ago, citing financial difficulties. Convenient, Alexander said darkly. I can try to track down former employees, Marcus offered. See if anyone remembers a patient matching Elizabeth's description. Do it. But quietly. If Victoria finds out we're digging, she already knows. I interrupted. Look at the account activity. Alexander leaned over my shoulder to look at the screen. Victoria had made another large withdrawal. Yesterday. $500,000. She's paying for something, I said. Something expensive. Or someone, Alexander added grimly. That's when Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, went very pale. How many? Pause. Understood. Lock it down. He hung up. We have a problem, he said. Security just flagged a team outside the building. 4 people. Professional equipment. They're setting up for surveillance. Call the police, Alexander said. On what grounds? They're on public property. They haven't done anything illegal. Yet, I added, Alexander's jaw clenched. How long until they breach? If they're smart, never. They'll just watch, wait for a mistake.
And if they're not smart? Marcus met his eyes. Tonight. When security does shift change at 2 a.m. We had 8 hours.
I spent them reading everything Marcus had compiled on Victoria, every financial record,
Every email. Every piece of evidence Alexander had collected over 3 years. Looking for the one thing that would destroy her.
And around midnight, I found it. Not in financial records.
In email metadata.
Alexander, I called. Come look at this.
He came to stand behind my chair, looking at the screen. Email timestamps, I said, pointing. From Elizabeth's account. Sent the day she disappeared.
I've seen these. They're part of the embezzlement evidence.
She was supposedly transferring funds.
Right, but look at the metadata, the IP address.
He leaned closer.
That's not Elizabeth's office. No, it's Victoria's. Understanding dawned in his eyes.
Victoria sent emails from Elizabeth's account. From her own computer.
Which means she had Elizabeth's credentials.
Which means she framed her. Alexander finished. This proves Victoria had access. It's not just access. Look at the timing. I pulled up another document. Elizabeth's last known location was her apartment at 6 a.m. These emails were sent at
6:30 a.m. from an IP address registered to Cross Industries' executive floor.
Elizabeth couldn't have sent them. She was at home. But Victoria could have. And did. Alexander pulled out his phone. I'm sending this to our attorneys. If we can prove Victoria sent those emails, we can prove she framed Elizabeth. I finished. We can prove everything. For the first time in days, Alexander smiled. Really smiled. You found it, he said. The smoking gun. We found it, I corrected. Together.
He looked at me then with an expression that made my breath catch. Wonder. Hope. And something else I couldn't name.
Elizabeth would be proud, he said softly. I'm not Elizabeth. No, he agreed. You're better. Before I could ask what that meant, every light in the apartment went out. Darkness. Complete and sudden. Alexander's hand found mine in the blackness. Don't move, he whispered. They're here. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. What do? We wait.
For what? For them to make their move.
Or for security to stop them. I could hear sounds in the darkness. Footsteps. Quiet, deliberate. More than one person. They were inside. Alexander pulled me closer, his body between me and the sounds. Stay behind me. He breathed against my ear. No matter what happens. Alexander, I mean it, Lily. Stay behind me. The lights came back on. Sudden. Blinding. When my eyes adjusted, I saw them. 4 people in tactical gear, faces covered, moving with military precision. Professional. Dangerous. This wasn't a break-in. This was an extraction. And standing behind them, perfectly composed in a designer suit that probably cost more than my nursing salary for a year, was Victoria Chen. She looked older than the photos I'd seen. Sharp cheekbones. Ice blue eyes. Hair pulled back so severely it looked like it hurt. She looked at me and smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hello, Elizabeth, she said. Or do you prefer Lily now? I couldn't speak. It's been a long time, she continued. 5 years since I helped you disappear.
Since I convinced you that Alexander was the enemy. Since I gave you a new identity and a new life, Alexander's eyes met mine. There was blood on his lip, but his expression was focused entirely on me. Don't listen to her, he said. Victoria laughed. Oh, Alexander, still trying to save her. It's almost touching. She turned to me. He didn't tell you the whole truth, did he? About why you ran? I didn't run, I said. My voice sounded distant, not my own. You said I disappeared. Because you found out what he'd done. She stepped closer. You found out that the embezzlement was real. That he'd used you to hide his crimes. That everything between you was a manipulation. That's a lie, Alexander said. Is it? She pulled out a tablet, showed me documents, financial records, transactions with my signature. You were going to expose him. So he made you disappear, made everyone think you were guilty. And when that didn't work, he found you again and brought you back to finish what he started. I looked at the documents, then at Alexander. Is any of this true? I asked. The documents are real, he said. Your signature is real, but you didn't steal that money. She did. He nodded at Victoria. Victoria, my former VP of operations. The person who had access to your credentials, your accounts, your entire life. Victoria's smile didn't waver. Proof? Your resignation 3 days after Elizabeth disappeared. Your new company founded with mysteriously available capital. Your purchase of cross-industry stock at prices that suggest insider knowledge. Alexander's voice was steady, factual. Should I continue? For the first time, Victoria's expression flickered. None of that proves anything. Maybe not in court, Alexander said. But it's enough to start asking questions. Enough to make people look closer. Which is why you're here, isn't it? Because Lily showing up again means your whole story starts falling apart. Victoria's men shifted closer. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Lily is going to come with us, voluntarily, and you're going to let her. Because if you don't, I'll release documents showing that you've been hiding her for 5 years. Complicity in fraud. Obstruction of justice. Your company will be destroyed. Alexander didn't move. Do it, he said. Victoria blinked. What? Release the documents. Destroy the company. I don't care. He looked at me. But you're not taking her. Alexander, I started. I lost you once by trying to protect you from the truth, he said. I'm not making that mistake again. Whatever you decide, whoever you choose to believe, it's your choice. Not mine, not hers, yours. The room went silent. Victoria was staring at him like he'd lost his mind. Maybe he had. Or maybe for the first time in 5 years he was thinking clearly. I looked at the documents in Victoria's hands. Then at Alexander, bleeding and surrounded but still standing between me and them. And I felt something shift. Not memory, not yet. But recognition. I don't remember you, I said to Alexander. I don't remember any of this, but I know one thing. What? He asked quietly. I know what fear looks like, and I know what protection looks like. I met his eyes. You've been afraid every moment I've been here. Not of me. For me. And Victoria? I turned to her. You look like someone who's cornered. Her smile vanished. You're making a mistake, she said. Maybe I agreed, but it's my mistake to make. I walked past her men, past Alexander to the phone on his desk. What are you doing?
Victoria demanded. I dialed 911. I'd like to report a break-in, I said calmly, and attempted kidnapping. The addresses. Victoria moved fast. But Alexander moved faster. He was between us in a heartbeat, catching her wrist, stopping her. And then something extraordinary happened. He touched me. Not Victoria. Me. His hand found mine, pulled me behind him, held on. The contact was electric, devastating, like every wall he'd built, every rule he'd enforced, every moment of restraint shattered in that single point of connection. He didn't let go. Even when Victoria's men tried to pull him away, even when sirens started wailing in the distance, even when everything around us descended into chaos. He held my hand, and I held his back. And in that moment, in that touch, everything came flooding back, not gradually, all at once, like a dam breaking. I remembered loving this man. I remembered working beside him, fighting beside him, believing in him when no one else did. I remembered the night he proposed, nervous and hopeful and so in love it hurt to look at him. I remembered discovering the embezzlement, tracing it back to Victoria, planning to expose her. And I remembered the last thing before everything went black. Victoria's voice, saying, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but you're too dangerous to leave alive. The memories hit me like a freight train. I gasped, stumbled. Alexander caught me. Lily, I remember, I whispered. Oh God, I remember. The police came. Victoria and her men were taken for questioning. The documents were seized as evidence. Alexander gave a statement that was calm, precise, and completely damning. And through it all, he didn't let go of my hand. It was only when the apartment was finally quiet again, when we were alone, that he slowly released me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? Breaking my own rule. I told you I couldn't control what would happen if I got too close. And what happened? I asked. He looked at our hands, still inches apart, but no longer touching. I remembered what it felt like to choose something over fear, he said. I stepped closer. His breath caught. Lily, I still don't remember everything, I said. I don't know if I ever will, but I know this. I reached for his hand again. I know that whoever I was, whoever I am now, I'm not afraid of this. Of you. Of what we might have been. His fingers interlaced with mine, trembling. What if you remember and hate me? He asked. What if everything Victoria said is true? Then I'll deal with it when it happens. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to believe you. I met his eyes, the way you chose me. Something in him broke then. Not shattered, opened. He pulled me close carefully, like I was something precious, and rested his forehead against mine. I've been holding my breath for 5 years, he whispered, waiting for you to come back, terrified of what it would mean when you did, and now I asked, now I'm terrified of losing you again. Then don't let go. He didn't. That night, we talked. Not about Victoria or the investigation or what came next. About small things. The kind of things that build trust. He told me about his childhood. About building his company from nothing. About the moment he'd realized he'd fallen in love with his CFO and couldn't do a damn thing about it because workplace relationships were complicated and she deserved better. I told him about waking up 5 years ago with no memory. About the hospital, the therapy, the slow process of building an identity from nothing. About becoming a nurse because helping people felt right even when nothing else did.
And somewhere in those hours, something started to feel familiar. Not his face, not his words, the way he listened, the way he left space for silence, the way he looked at me like I was the only real thing in his entire world. 3 weeks later, the investigation concluded. Victoria had been arrested. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, witness testimonies, digital trails. She'd stolen millions from cross industries using my credentials, then orchestrated my disappearance to cover her tracks. The part about my memory loss was harder to prove. The doctors said it could have been trauma, or drugs, or a combination of both. Victoria's people had been thorough in erasing Elizabeth Cross and creating Lily Hayes, but some things, they said, might come back with time. Some things already had. I remembered small moments now. Flashes. Alexander laughing at something I'd said in a meeting. The weight of an engagement ring I no longer wore. The way he'd look at me across a conference room like he was memorizing my face. Not enough to rebuild a complete past, but enough to know it had been real. On a Tuesday morning exactly 1 month after I'd walked into his apartment, Alexander found me in the kitchen. "I have a question," he said. "Just one?" He almost smiled. "For now, ask. Do you want your old job back?" I looked up from my coffee. "As your CFO?" "As whatever you want to be. CFO, consultant, nurse." He paused. "Elizabeth, Lily, both, neither." "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you to stay." The admission was quiet, honest. "In whatever capacity you're comfortable with. But I want you to stay." I set down my coffee. "There's something you should know," I said. He went very still. "What?" I'm starting to remember. "Not everything, but pieces." I met his eyes. "And every piece I remember makes me realize something." "What's that?" "That I'm falling in love with you twice. Once as Elizabeth. Once as Lily." I moved closer. "And I don't know which one is more terrifying." His hands found my face. Gentle, reverent. "You don't have to choose," he said. "You never did. You're both. You're everything. And I'm in love with all of it. Even the parts that don't remember, especially those parts." His thumb brushed my cheek. "Because you chose me anyway. Without history, without memory. Just chose me." "Is that what you've been waiting for?" I asked. "For me to choose you?" "I've been waiting for you to choose yourself," he said. "Everything else is just bonus." I kissed him then. Not because I remembered doing it before, but because it felt like the most honest thing I'd ever done. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling. Really smiling, the kind of smile that transformed his entire face. "There's one more thing," he said, his voice carrying a weight I couldn't quite identify. "What?" He reached into his pocket, moved slowly, deliberately, like this moment mattered more than anything that had come before. He pulled out a ring, not an engagement ring. Not yet. Not the flashy diamond solitaire you'd expect a billionaire to offer. A simple band of white gold, elegant in its simplicity, with an inscription inside that I couldn't read from where I stood. "I had this made 5 years ago," he said. "Right before you disappeared. I was going to give it to you on your birthday." I took the ring, read the inscription. "Choose us. It's a promise," he explained. "Not of what we were, of what we could be. If you want it." I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "I want it," I said. 6 months later, the investigation was fully closed. Victoria was serving 20 years in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, and a dozen other charges that would keep her locked up well into old age. Cross Industries was stronger than ever, its stock price higher than before the scandal. Its reputation rebuilt on foundations of transparency and trust that Alexander had insisted on implementing. The board had apologized. Investors had come back. The media had moved on to newer scandals. And I was back where I belonged, though everything looked different now. Not as Elizabeth Cross, CFO, not as Lily Hayes, nurse, as myself, whoever that was becoming. Some days I felt more like Elizabeth, sharp-edged, confident, ready to tear apart a financial report and rebuild it better. Other days I felt more like Lily, careful, empathetic, seeing people instead of just numbers. Most days I was both. A hybrid of who I'd been and who I'd become, and I was learning to be okay with that strange duality. I worked alongside Alexander now, helping rebuild systems Victoria had corrupted, implementing new safeguards so nothing like this could happen again. We'd created a whistleblower program, strengthened internal audits, built a culture where asking questions was encouraged, not punished. It was slow work, tedious sometimes, but it mattered. I still didn't remember everything about being Elizabeth Cross. Probably never would. The doctors said the combination of drugs Victoria had used, experimental compounds designed to target specific neural pathways responsible for long-term memory formation, had caused permanent damage. Some memories were simply gone forever, erased as thoroughly as files deleted from a hard drive and overwritten. But I remembered enough. I remembered the way he'd waited for me, never dating anyone else in 5 years. Turning down every advance from women who would have given anything to be with a billionaire CEO. The way he'd chosen me over his company, his reputation, his safety. Telling Victoria to destroy it all rather than let her take me. The way he touched me for the first time in 5 years, not because his fear had vanished, but because protecting me mattered more than protecting himself from the possibility of pain. And I remembered this. Love isn't about remembering. It's about choosing. Every single day. Even when it's terrifying. Especially then. On our first anniversary, 1 year since I'd walked into that apartment as a stranger with no memory and a desperate need for money. 1 year since I'd met a man so broken by loss he couldn't let anyone touch him. 1 year since everything changed. Alexander found me standing at the windows, looking out at the city. The same windows where I'd first found him standing alone at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, trapped in his own beautiful prison. "What are you thinking?" he asked, coming to stand beside me, his reflection merging with mine in the glass. "That I'm glad I forgot," I said. The admission surprised even me, but it was true. He came to stand beside me, our reflections overlapping in the glass, two people who'd found each other across impossible odds. Why? Because if I'd remembered everything from the start, I would have spent the whole time trying to be Elizabeth again. Trying to recapture what we had. I turned to face him. "But this way, I gotta fall in love with you as myself, not as who I was, as who I'm becoming." "And who are you becoming?" he asked softly. "Someone who isn't afraid of touch, or trust, or choosing the man who chose her when she was nothing but a stranger with his ex-fiancé's face." He pulled me close, his arms steady and sure. "You were never nothing," he said. "You were everything. You still are, even without my memory, especially without it." He kissed my forehead.
Because you proved that what we have isn't about shared history. It's about shared choice. And I choose you. Every version. Every moment. Every lifetime. That's a lot of choosing, I said. He smiled against my hair. I'm committed. Good, I said. Because I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I looked up at him. This man who'd built walls to keep the world out and somehow let me in. This man who'd lost me once and spent 5 years searching. This man who'd finally touched me not because he wasn't afraid, but because I mattered more than his fear. I promise, I said. And I meant it. Because here's what I learned, and I learned it the hard way, through pain and loss and 5 years of being someone I wasn't. Some people spend their whole lives looking for someone who makes them feel safe, who builds walls around them, who protects them from every possible hurt. But the truly lucky ones, the ones who find something real and lasting and worth fighting for, find someone who makes them feel brave. Someone who sees their fear and doesn't try to fix it, just stands beside them while they face it. Someone who loses control, not in anger, not in violence, but in love. In the terrifying act of letting someone matter more than safety, more than self-protection, more than all the carefully constructed walls we build to keep the world at a distance. Someone who chooses them, again and again, even when it costs everything. I found that in Alexander, and he found it in me. Not despite who I'd become because of it. The nurse and the billionaire. The woman who forgot and the man who remembered enough for both of them. Choosing each other. Every single day. That's how love works when it's real. Not in grand gestures or perfect memories. But in the quiet moments when someone reaches for your hand and doesn't let go. Even when they're terrified. Especially then, and that's how our story begins. Not with once upon a time, but with, I choose you. And that's enough. That's everything. The end. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If it reached your heart, even just a little, do not leave without letting me know. A simple heart in the comments is enough. And if you want to feel more stories like this, stories about love that survives everything, courage born from impossible choices, and finding home in the most unexpected places, make sure to subscribe to Dramora Stories. Every story here is a reminder that the truth always finds its way to the surface, and sometimes that is exactly what sets you free. And maybe that is true for you too.